to that thing, and I think even NASA themselves made the mistake in little thumbnail photographs they had of not taking the trouble to turn it into an island, not thinking that anybody would enlarge these thumbnail photos. And there it is. It's a huge machine doing something.
Oh, absolutely.
And the same thing, they made the mistake of doing thumbnail photos of areas on the backside of the moon where they didn't take the effort to take the thumbnails, enlarge them, put in the ejectus, the so-called white ejecta, and then reduce it down in size to the thumbnail, so that you can now take the thumbnail, enlarge it, and see these areas that don't have the ejecta that should have the ejecta. Now, of course, you don't get the detail, but what we're proving here is that they use the white ejecta to cover up the cities.
There you go. There you go. It's interesting, too, that these cities are around the craters, and I think this hints at what the craters actually are. A lot of them, I don't think all those craters on the moon are actually craters.
No, they aren't.
And that's interesting, though, that the two things kind of fit together, but it makes sense. Now, if the moon were to be towed into place, let's say it's a Dyson sphere, like that's what this would suggest, that it was originally an artificial body. How would it accumulate this material to mine in the first place, unless it was made specifically for the purpose of attracting, originally anyway, attracting space debris.
Yeah.
They could be specifically mined later, almost like a project in the making that would last for a very long time.
Right.
So it would be like a mineral catcher.
Right.
I had never thought of, how would they actually go about using something like that. If it were an artificial body, what would be the purpose of it? I mean, what purpose does it serve the Earth? I know there's a lot of scientific jargon that fits in there, and what does it mean for us? I mean, how does it...
Well, therein lies the question now. On the front side of the moon, right almost directly dead center of the moon is an area called the sinus medi, which means middle cavity. Right in the center of that is an object, artifact, that rises 6 miles tall out of the sinus medi. It's made of a glass-like material that you can't see from Earth, but from the lunar orbiter photos, specifically lunar orbiter 384M, had the sun kind of behind it, so you can see this thing. And there's a tripod, a graceful tripod, that rises up about 5 miles, and then this giant cube or ball that's made up of all these small cubes makes up this huge thing that sits on top of the tripod, and it's a mile in length, width, and height. And that we wonder what that is. It's my personal opinion that that thing, and they call it the big soul machine on the moon. That's what I call it. I think that's what handles the souls back and forth from Earth. In other words, when you're born, that thing sends down a soul into a newborn baby, and then when you die, it retracts the soul to send back again. And what they do with it up there, I don't know. But supposedly the Greys run that operation, and they do have underground facilities near and around that thing, and that's one entire operation, and it seems like it's separate from the mining and all the rest of the stuff that goes on there. It's just a real interesting question. Who fits in where? What are those people that look like us doing up there? How far are they advanced? Are they allied with the Greys up there? Exactly what is going on?
The question now, where did you get your information on the possibility that it was a soul collector?
I got really interested in remote viewing, and there was a remote viewer, Joe McMoneagle, who was in the Stargate program with the Army. I think it was called Stargate, the one they terminated in 1994. Anyway, he was tasked at one point during the time he was with the government's remote viewing program to find out what happened to the soul after a person died. And he was sent, somebody had a fatal car accident in San Francisco, and he was sent to remote view the soul. And he followed it, and it was going towards the moon. And he says as it got closer to the moon, it appeared to be being wrapped in something. He didn't know what. As he got closer and closer to the moon, he got this message in his mind, and it said, "This is not your place. You do not belong here. Don't come any closer." And but he kept following it until he got real close to the moon, and the message got so loud that he actually felt threatened. He felt his life was being threatened, so he had to break off following this soul. So anyway, that gave me the idea of where the soul was going. When we pass away, our soul goes to the moon. Then Richard Hoagland came up a few years ago with that photo, Lunar Orbiter 384M, that showed that huge thing in the sinus medii. Well, now the moon is in rotation lock at the same thing, faces the same face of the moon, faces Earth at all times. Right dead center, there's this huge 6-mile tall artifact, and it's pointing directly at Earth. So I'm wondering, what could that mean? I mean, what could that be? Is that a transmitter? Is that a receiver? Are they sending down signals? And then when I read McMoneagle's story, I thought, oh, I know what that is. That is the thing that collects the souls and does what it processes them and sends them back.
That's a fascinating thought. I don't know exactly what to say.
And then we talked. Then we heard Sleeper on his thread. The first thread that he had was called something to do with extraterrestrials, whatever it was. It was 110 pages long, and I went through the thing, and he started talking about the souls and how we were here. You know that the souls were many lifetimes old. That every one of us has a soul that maybe 60 had been in use 60 times, maybe 100 times, maybe 1,000 times, and it kept being recycled back and forth until it was the perfect soul. And but he didn't mention where it went or where it came from when you died and when you were born. So I figured, well, that's the one. That's the thing in the middle of the moon they call the big soul machine on the moon. That's where the soul goes. And we pressed Sleeper several times to comment on it, and he said, I can't. And the reason he says he can't comment on it, he talks about the little grays and how they have a job to do down here, and how they are responsible for the well-being of the body. They are responsible for the bodies that we have, but they're not responsible for the soul. So he couldn't comment on too much on the soul and where it went and where it came from. Just the fact that it is recycled all the time.
Interesting, very interesting. So, what did Hoagland think it was? I'm a little lacking in information.
Hoagland makes no speculation. As a matter of fact, every time I talk about his name and the thing that comes out of the thing that's in the sinus medii, he wants me to specifically point out that he does not agree that it's a soul machine, and he wants me to make that perfectly clear. So I do. Hoagland doesn't believe that it's a soul machine. He doesn't know what it is.
Okay, well, to each his own. I have no personal, at this point I have no theories or hypotheses of what it might actually be. I have a hard time even seeing it. I'm amazed that you found so much detail about it, especially the cube. You say there's a cube there.
It's in the book Penetration.
Does he have photographs of it?
No.
No.
No, there's no photographs. It's only what he remote viewed, and apparently I have a second or third generation copy of Lunar Orbiter 384M, and I took it off. I grabbed it off a video of Hoagland's. I think it was called the Moon-Mars Connection, and that's all I have. Now, Richard has promised me for the last year or so for a first-generation copy of that photo so that I can see the little cubes themselves, but it has not arrived yet, so I haven't seen it, so I'm just taking the description from what I've read.
We have two guests coming up, Neil Adams and David Sereda, that I really hope you can be present for the interviews.
Yeah, I hope so.
I don't know, are you familiar with Neil Adams?
No.
He has a theory that the planets grow and that tectonic plate movement is a lot different than we're being told. He has videos on it. He's been on Coast to Coast more than once. It's just interesting as it can be. And he's a comic book artist. He's a famous comic book artist. And so the two things in combination don't, you're thinking, what in this Sam Hill? A comic book artist who just suddenly got this massive theory, and it's very intricate. He's got something like 20 videos depicting a tectonic plate movement and how he's actually showing that the planets are actually starting off very small, and the spread is a natural growth, like they're growing from the inside out.
Yeah.
It's amazing. He's very interesting, and I think with your understanding of science and space that you might find that interesting. You also are aware of who David Sereda is?
Yeah.
Evidence?
Right.
He did a really good video based on the information collected by a Canadian, was he a TV broadcaster, radio broadcaster in Canada who picked up NASA's secret transmissions?
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting tape that I've seen.
Mm-hmm. It's called Evidence, the Case for NASA UFOs, and he's not exactly fond of NASA either. It's not that we're not fond of NASA. It's more of a case of we're not exactly sure why they're not telling people everything they need to know. You believe
because they work directly for the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense makes all the decisions on what NASA can do or say. They have no authority themselves.
I noticed in a lot of the videos that were taken from the shuttle, the videotapes that were taken from the shuttle, that there was so much activity in space. It was unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, that cannot all be satellites and space debris, space junk. There's got to be more going on up there because, two ships flying next to each other in formation are supposedly two asteroids? Okay. No, I don't think so. So I think he's made a good case for that, and I think that would be a very interesting conversation to hear you and David discuss NASA's case for UFOs.
Yeah.
In the meantime, a lot of these upcoming guests like Michael Heiser, Glenn Kimball, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Glenn Kimball.
Right.
Do you know who he is?
But refresh my memory.
Glenn Kimball is one who's done a lot of study on the ancient Americas.
Oh, no.
Oh, and he's got some fascinating information about civilizations in North, South, and Central America way before, and visitations from other civilizations way before the Europeans got here.
Yeah. I'm not picking up this program on my computer. Are we still on?
If we're not, that'll be available for people to download and listen to.
Oh, okay.
So.
Because it says segment duration 60 minutes.
Right. Well, if it's not on right now, it will be. available for people to hear. So